sir.
How you doing, Dave?
There's a lot going on. I've added in dredging into this, a dredging update into this. So I just provided some bullet points under each category just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on with each one of them. The first one is the Boys Camp property that we purchased. It's in Chimney Rock Village. And just going down the list there, it's things that we've already done and things that we need to do. Met with Shannon, created a path to get through this whole process. Plans and design, its plans are to design a park, river access with combine the current Boys Camp materials recovery facility in the town limits with the newly acquired property in Chimney Rock Village to create a new, larger, more efficient recovery facility. This will allow for the Morris Park materials recovery facility to be repurposed for park development. The goals that we've got in it is to tie this plan together with the Rocky Broad River Gateway Project, Morris Park site plan, and the Pardiff site plans. We have already met with Chimney Rock Village in July to discuss the land use and what we were wanting to do. Chimney Rock Village put in their, that they would like to see part of this be a park with river access on the same property. The Boys Camp property land use will have to go through Chimney Rock, seeing as it is in their jurisdiction. Also, floodplain and stuff is in their jurisdiction. Brown Engineering has already submitted a no-rise survey to the county and to the Chimney Rock for us being able to build into a floodway. By taking away this Morris Park facility will allow, we're hoping will allow us to build up into the other park. So we're just trading floodland. The property is in the process of being surveyed. It's going to combine the two properties together and give us a floodplain and a topo on the land. And then I got a to-do list there below it that you guys can look through. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. The Boys Camp material recovery facility that's in town limits, the current spoils area that we use. Tim Edwards was on site on 8/6, cleaning and restoring that spoils area. Tim was able to use the sediment that was left over from the last dredging contractor to help build that spoils into a more usable area. So in the bid that he gave was, I think, roughly $70,000 to clean up what was there, and stuff is going to come in way below that because he's not having to get rid of all that material. Tim Edwards, he's got a screening plant, a wash plant screening system that he's going to be putting in the next few weeks. He has went and purchased a new refurbished dredge. It's not been used since refurbished. It'll be delivered the first of next week, and he plans on being able to start dredging as soon as the WIG games are over. So that's pretty much what's going on with that and dredging right now. Also, Tim Edwards has asked for a access road through the Chimney Rock part of Boys Camp Road area that we have, and I've provided a site map and the way the pit's designed and stuff, and he's going to be using tractor trailer dump trucks that are extremely hard to get into this Happy Hollow lane. He's asking that he be able to use that property just to come in, you can see the black line come down and back over that area into the spoils pit that we got, be able to load the trucks and pull back out. So while we're going through this process with Chimney Rock and stuff, there would not be any field put on this land. There would not be any equipment staged on this land. It would be nothing more than a haul road to be able to come in, back in, load, and pull back out, which would give them better access on the coming back out on the Boys Camp Road.
I'm sure the Happy Hollow residents would prefer that anyway.
I'm sure they would.
Happy Hollow.
Happier Hollow Road.
Well, that
would that not completely defeat the purpose of trying to have more capacity, which is what we were looking at in using that property, is to increase our capacity, which right now is, I forgot what it was over here, plus over there was only like 26,000 cubic yards, and we need an annual need of 36, wasn't it? And that would have given us 40. Which is possibility of moving ahead each year on their dredging. But if we're going to take part of that property and make it into a park as they want, and only use that as an access road, then we're not going to gain anything, are we?
Well, we are. The access road is just temporarily till we get through all the red tape with Chimney Rock and the floodplain administration and everything, and we finally get the permission to build the spoils pit.
Okay.
And then it will be built onto that property. But there's still, it's not showing it on this map here, but the smaller sliver of land is going, with the way this spoils pit will be, there will still be plenty of room to put some type of park, picnic tables, access to the river. The dock that used to be in there actually has a ramp on that portion of land that we could put a small dock in there. So there would still be room to have this spoils basin, work area, and a park. You know, when you look at it on this map here, it looks a whole lot smaller than when you go over there and actually see about where things would be at. This haul road here is just simply a temporary fix until we can move forward with the bigger plan.
It just gets him in operation for now.
Yes,
Right.
yes, this is, once we expand that spoils pit over onto this, then that haul road, it'll be over the top of that road, and that'll go away.
And we would still be able to do away with these spoils
Yes, sir.
pits if everything comes back approved.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then on the back page that I gave you a map of Google Earth, there's primary and secondary, and those are our dredging areas that we're going to target this year. Primarily is going to get in the river. We're going to try to get an underwater catch basin to be able to stop the sediment from going into the lake. The secondary part of what I want to do this year is this area here. I'd like to take a few feet off of this area that's labeled secondary, because right now when we're at full pond, we have boats that are kicking up mud plumes as they go through there. You're in an average of 3 to 5 feet deep depending on what our lake level is. So if we could take a few feet off of that this year, next year we go back to the river, and then we come back out here and we take a little bite at the apple on the secondary each year to get that back down.
How many yards are we planning to pull out of there this year?
I don't know that yet. But what I've got to do is we've got to compare how much money we have after we do this other work with the surveys and stuff like that, and see how much money we got. And I'm not...
Normally, our goal was to take 30,000, but we had yards from this past year that we had credit from the
Right, and that's part of why...
We could take that, so we could literally take more, but we're going to use some of that money for the repurposing.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes, well, our goal is still to try to go for 30,000 cubic yards, and if there's more money in there, we're going to go for everything we can get out of there this year.
And as I remember the discussions we've had about this master plan of the Boys Camp Road, we are going to continue, I know, to seek a grant for the park portion of that land.
Yes.
And then a different funding grant for the dredging program.
Yes.
Right? And we think we can use that for both sides of the river to clean up the old pit and move it over there, or?
The money that we spend on the new property for the spoils area.
Yeah.
And the money that we use to remove the Morris Park side, all of that money can be counted towards the $600,000 we have to spend to get the $300,000 grant money back. So every time if we turn the receipts in, it counts toward
And then
that
there's a
$600,000.
possibility then of not just the part of type grant for the new park space on the Boys Camp roadside, but then once the Morris Park site is cleaned of that spoils pit, then that becomes a potential site for additional park development, I suspect,
Yes,
Shannon?
yes.
And then we would seek a
Exactly.
grant for that as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what we hope to do is, we have the grant in with part of, and some of that, we would like to perhaps see if we can repurpose some of those monies. The feedback we receive from part of is we stand to actually secure the grant. But now we're having to refocus, and I think we can make a great case, given that we're a lake community, we have dredging needs, and that's the driver here, and to show a creative way that we can have both a materials recovery site and a park. We do it right out here. There's no reason why it's a demonstration of how you can have recreation and a materials recovery site on the same property. We can do that on a smaller scale over here and be able to tap both grant sources. So that's our sneaky objective, is to be able to retain both sources of revenue to pull this off. So that's where we're headed. And I just want to say thanks to Dean for finding a creative way to continue using that site over here in the interim as we seek approval from Chimney Rock Village. And I want to underscore that Chimney Rock Village will have to approve this project at the end of the day. We own it, but it's in their jurisdiction. They have the zoning regulations, and they're in control of the floodplain ordinance regulations for that property as well. So we have to secure their approval for us to do what it is we would like to do. And so we've had a preliminary meeting with them to try to tease out what it is they feel like we need to do there. And so now we're gearing up to try to meet those expectations and those standards and their desires, in hopes that we can secure the money from two sources, gain their approval, and then do over there what it is we need to do. At the same time, set the stage for us to have a facility here that's in keeping with our original Morris Park site plan that council approved. A number of things we're trying to do, but Dean can do this. So,
Well, there is another alternative, and that property, although it's in Chimney Rock, is surrounded on four sides by Lake Lure property. By the road that's town maintained, and the residential area on both sides, or commercial, and the river front. We could always request that property be de-annexed from Chimney Rock and annexed into Lake Lure. It has no effect on anybody's tax base, since it's owned by a municipality. And so that's another alternative, and then it would fall under our zoning regulations and do what we wish with it as town-owned property. So that's another alternative we should not forget.
All right.
And in working with this too, I think we always keep in mind, Chimney Rock depends on us for a lot of things. And I don't see any reason why we won't be able to figure this out and work together.
And just one other note that I didn't mention there, we're talking about building a small park on that side of the river with river access. We could do a lot like we do with the spoils pit on the Morris Park side, is we create walking trails on the longer spoils area on the Boys Camp Road side that would tie into this park too, as a park walk or something along that lines, because it's an elevated piece of land that gives you a better view and stuff also.
exactly. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon?
Thank you, Dean.
Sure. Thank you, Dean. The next project that we've talked some about, but now we're gearing up to move forward with, and that's our telecommunication ordinance. As folks know who live here, telecommunication has a lot of issues, so we're trying to find ways to bring better telecommunications to the town of Lake Lure. This is a piece that we have to get right as we move forward. So couldn't think of a better person to head this up, and that's Brad Burton. Brad is serving as our interim director for community development. He'll do a great job. He is doing a great job, and so Brad has this, and he's moving forward with it. So Brad, tell us a little bit about this ordinance, if you will.
Thank you, Shannon, I appreciate it. Good evening, gentlemen. The last amendment to the town's requirements for the siting of telecommunications facilities was October the 14th, 2003. Since that time, there's been a significant amount of legislation, both federal and state, as to the topic of facilitating the deployment of mobile broadband and other enhanced wireless communication services. Significant in that legislation is the Federal Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act. Specifically, in that act was Title VI, Section 206202, the Public Safety Broadband Network. If you'll note the date, 2012, this came on the heels of 2011 events in New York City where public safety individuals, there was a tremendous amount of trouble communicating back and forth between agencies, between departments, and so the feds stepped in and put this act into place. On the heels of that was the North Carolina General Assembly Session Law, House Bill 664, ratified June 18th and adopted the 26th of 2013, and the Federal Communications Commission report and order adopted on October 17th of 2014, which was entitled Acceleration of Broadband Deployment. I will mess that up more than once before I'm done with this. These legislative changes have elements therein that should be incorporated into the town's telecommunications regulations, and in an effort to contemporize that legislation to comply with these federal and state requirements. These changes have been accomplished and incorporated and reviewed by the Zoning and Planning Board, along with other changes to the regulations as borrowed from other jurisdictions with similar topography and viewshed areas. Boone and Lenore were two that were prominently figured there. The pressing question, however, is this: are the changes as proposed actually advantageous to the attraction of future wireless sites? Are these new regulations alone sufficient to facilitate wireless sites in the community in order to enhance our communication needs? Or are the regulations inconsequential to the market, which ultimately shall determine the potential for the return on investment for these wireless providers? These are questions that the Zoning and Planning Board has asked me that I cannot answer. The Zoning and Planning Board has asked that I solicit the Utilities Board for an advisory opinion. I reached out to the board chair, Mr. Hyatt, while concurrently making a request of Mr. Russ Pitts to see if he could bring any of his telecommunication industry knowledge and resources to bear. I advised Mr. Hyatt of my query to Mr. Pitts that occurred concurrently, as I stated. Mr. Hyatt responded he would defer to Russ on the matter. He stated further that Mr. Pitts certainly has the contacts, experience, and expertise to help you develop an ordinance and regulations that would be current and industry appropriate. So in light of that, I provided Mr. Pitts a copy of my work product, and he has agreed to attempt to get the material in front of his contacts within the industry for the purposes of feedback and possible refinement to that. His comment on the last copy receipt of my draft was, this does appear like I have something to work with. So I'm presenting this to you as just an update to council, as kind of where things are. Been to the Zoning and Planning Board twice, and they like the ordinance, but these questions are in the forefront of their minds. So we've kind of changed direction a little bit, and we're going to see if we can't get some help from Mr. Pitts, as well as try to get a round table with some of these telecommunications siting companies to not let the fox in the hen house, but just to kind of find out what it would be to take. Did you get him?
I got him back at you.
Nice shot. See, that's,
Get him.
uh-oh.
You met your match with Darby.
I'll stay over here. So anyway, this is basically want to give you guys an idea of this. This train has left the station. It's got up to speed. It's slowed down. We switched tracks. We got back on track. We've changed tracks again. Now we're back up to speed. So that's basically just an overview of where things are with this. Do you have any questions for me?
We appreciate it, because one of the things I was going to bring up through the Utilities Board is that we had Point Broadband that was willing to come into the area, but they needed 30 signatures or 30 commitments and a deposit to start their work, and they've never reached that quantity. They're in the mid-20s right now, And now people are beginning to ask for their deposits back because nothing happened. So in our community, we could not get 30 signatures to commit to broadband service through Point Broadband at this point.
I don't know if this is germane to that part of your statement, but I also, at Mr. Pitt's request, provided him XY coordinates basically of every address in Rutherford County, and I believe he's trying to reach out, if you will, maybe step across the border a little bit and seeing if he can't, which would be advantageous for us as well. So and if Mr. Pitts is here, I'd love to meet. I've never met the gentleman, so I'd like to meet him, corresponding with him a bunch. Do you have any other questions?
Just to be clear, to kind of get this in layman's terms, what this is all about is siting future towers, right? Basically.
Basically.
And doing it in such a way that we don't unnecessarily detract from the scenic beauty of our gorge, right?
The technology since 2003 has really come a long way, and
So the practical application of that is the size and
Correct.
height and
Correct.
Offensive design of the old cell towers are now getting more acceptable. Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
if you'll indulge me for another 30 seconds, the trend right now, everybody's phone in this room, or most of you, is 4G. You're running a 4G network. I have a 4G. 5G is on its way, and 5G is basically where there are these small facilities that they locate them on phone poles, and they locate them on traffic lights and stuff like that. And then the impetus behind this, believe it or not, is Mr. Musk and some of his driverless cars, because they need a strong signal in order to do what they do. And it's gaining a lot of momentum. But the 5G, I believe, has been deployed in Los Angeles, and there's somebody, I think Charlotte may be a candidate for it that's coming. We're not going to see that here for a while. But then again, once this thing starts going, we may be seeing some of that. Again, it's a very nondescript type application.
Well, I just wanted to be sure, a lot of the emphasis, at least my perception of it is, it's gone on in the last couple of years, has had a lot more to do with internet access, Wi-Fi, high-speed, high bandwidth
Yes, sir.
reception, and I think that's important, and every good community needs that. But
Yes, sir.
I don't sense the same level of concern or attention's been given to cell phone reception, and those are two different things. And I was happy to hear lately, as I've had these discussions with Russ Pitts, that it's kind of a dual discussion now, as they're citing so-called towers or stations where radio wave internet can be based.
Right.
Those same towers, I think everyone's looking at it now, as also potential
Yes.
locations where additional cell phone stations can, is that
Yes,
right?
sir,
Which I think is a good thing, and
Yes.
I'm glad to see that, because I personally think cell phone reception for this is at least as big a problem, and then sometimes a much bigger problem for people who live and visit here than getting high-speed internet, because there are some solutions for that, but I'm not aware of too many great reception areas for cell phone service in this gorge, so.
And the importance of being able to call AAA, have your wife be able to call AAA to have them come change a tire on the dark side of the road somewhere around here is critical. It is. So I'm hoping that Mr. Pitts will align some folks and get us all to the table. But that's where we are right now, and we hope to proceed with this pretty quick.
Brad, thank you. And if were there any other questions about that issue? While you're there, if you could just give us, if you and William could give us just a quick update on Duck Cove properties. I know that's been ongoing, and I think just having a brief on that would be helpful.
Well, the defendants were all served. 2 of them have defaulted, meaning they have not filed answers within the prescribed time, 30 days. We got, the clerk has entered It's called an entry of default. It's a hoop you jump through before getting a default judgment. So no one is putting up a fight. They're not responding. That's both good and bad, I guess. But I should have hopefully a final judgment in it within a couple months. So at the end of all that, there'll be a court order. If it goes as I hope, there'll be a court order ordering the demolition and removal. And if it doesn't happen, then there may be consequences. At the end of the day, the town could do it with the blessing of the court if it so chose, which is better to get permission from the court first than hope you do it right and you wind up in court later.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Thank you for doing that. I just wanted to.
If I could ask Brad while he's still there, this is on a little bit of a different issue, but under the Community Development Department. I know you're very familiar, and you too, Shannon, with the signage issue with Flowering Bridge.
Yes, sir.
And I noticed that wayfinding signs are starting to appear. And it was in the paper that Rutherford County has now. And I know that we approved the wayfinding signs for the town, which included directional signs for the Flowering Bridge. Do we have any clue as to when they might actually be installed?
It's going to be, my thought was that it was going to be before the wedding, and they are underway. When ours will be installed, when ours are going to be installed, I don't know. I don't have a solution for you.
Who's controlling that?
The TDA.
Don Case?
Can you ask them if they got a timeline?
I can, yes.
Yeah, because I understand that even you, Brad, were over by Nealon's or whatever, and a lady came up and asked you, could you tell me where the Flowering Bridge is?
Man, if you turn around and look over your shoulder,
But believe me, that happens more often than people realize.
Right.
So,
And I have had some discussions with Kathy Tanner and Bill. You know, it's my understanding that the Stanton Flowering Bridge is essentially a town park. We have, you know, we have the ability to sign our stuff. You know, the question is, you know, what is the length, what is the scope and breadth of our current encroachment agreement with the NCDOT? Will it support another sign? Is that something that council would like to do? It would have to be something that you guys and the planning board would bless. So that's something else just to think about.
Let me just add this, the intelligence I just received, I can't not reveal my sources. So the TDA is basically putting the signs in the east, and they're working their way this way. Now, that could be advantageous, because if you think about the WEG, folks that are down there, those signs are going to be pointing to Lake Lure and Chimney Rock. So they'll see those signs there first as they come to the equestrian center, and that will direct them our way. So based on what I just heard from Valerie, I think that's probably a good thing.
yeah, if we could contact TDA and Don Case.
I can do that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it, because they continue to bring that up at the Parks and Rec Board meeting and stuff, and so.
I would say that it's been good to know that they are moving forward after a long time of being in a legal battle. Now we are signing, basically reapproving the old plans that were approved, and so we do know they're going in. So they are moving this way. Thank goodness, it's starting to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anything else,
I
Jim?
knew you had been involved in that
Yes,
as well, so.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, Shannon, anything else? We done?
That's it.
Thank you very much for that. All right, we move on to item number 5, which is a council liaison reports and comments. And as I always do, I ask for a volunteer to go first.
I'll go ahead.
And there goes.
There goes the night.
Yeah, they're changing it up. All right, Commissioner.
Board of Adjustment met on July 24th and had one variance request. And I have to say, of all my years involved with the BOA, that one case was a textbook case requiring a variance, if there ever were any. And it was an easy case. It went very fast and well prepared and presented, but definitely a justified variance. There are 310 VROPs active to date. The Lake Structure Appeals Board did not meet. There were no cases, and the Board of Adjustment and Lake Structure Appeals Board for this month have been canceled due to no cases. The Parks and Recreation Board met on August the 2nd. There was some discussion about, we now have 2 counters that have been installed at Buffalo Creek Park, and thanks to Trevor, who was here earlier, got those installed. And so we ought to start having some numbers for July and August during the September meeting. A rescue occurred on the Weed Patch Mountain Trail, noting that 2 fire departments responded and located the hikers that were somewhat lost or misoriented, and the markers worked great in helping with that rescue, I understand. So all the emergency planning and where the markers go and that kind of stuff really helped that process. There was discussion on Luremont trails, and there's a possibility for a grant that would require a 25% match from the town, and there was some discussion on the possibility of the what we called the ABC walkway that could possibly help fall into that category as part of that 25% match, because it would be needed coming down that side anyway. There's a possibility, without going into detail or location, of some property being donated to the town for the Flowering Bridge. Of course, whether the Flowering Bridge would actually accept it and all is being discussed, and I think you may have been involved in some of that, so I don't want to disclose where that property is yet. The Flowering Bridge noted that they're working on the kiosk. The TDA promised a $3,000 grant to help with that, and the Flying Bridge also thanked the town for our budget commitment to them. We discussed, there was a proposal, and I mentioned it last month, a proposal to change the speed limit from 35 to 25 from the Pool Creek Picnic Park Bridge to the Washburn Road area, and that there were other discussion, and that the Parks and Rec Board was going to be talking about that. They did. And their official recommendation is to change the speed limit from 35 to 25 from the east end of Harris Road, which is the part by the post office entrance, all the way to the Chimney Rock Village limits. That is now, with that, that's now to the manager for, I guess, to prep for board discussion for next month or something. Okay. Where we want to go with that recommendation. And that was a unanimous recommendation of the board. A discussion also occurred regarding the traffic pattern through the marina area. And there has been 1 or 2 complaints that I'm aware of that it needs to be one way, and I guess at one time it was, and when it was repaved, all the arrows were not repainted. As you enter, you go to the left of the island. If you have a boat you want to launch, you come around to the right and back into the launch. Otherwise, you continue straight. But you have that pass-through that has arrows going both ways, and people cut in both ways, going back and forth. The board recommended that we all talk to Sonia at the beach. A follow-up from Melody is that Sonia suggested doing away with the pass-through altogether, because she says that's really the problem. And yes, it should be one way. The board also suggested that the police department make the recommendations on the location for the directional arrows in that area. And to me, it's, I don't know if you police really want to get involved in that or leave it to public works for traffic flow. But to me, it's simple. We have one-way sign already. You just continue the straight all the way down and then back up this side of it. If we want to make it one way, again, that's something we need to go to you and staff action. So, and that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my report will be very brief because Brad was kind enough to give the update on the cell towers, which was about all we talked about at zoning and planning board. The board met on July the 17th, that's Tuesday at 9:30, and the cell towers was the topic of discussion. At the asset management board, the discussion was about the Boys Camp Road property. It was discussed at length. Major issues centered around dredging program, the materials recovery site, recreational possibilities, and seeing how the development plan aligns with the Rocky Broad Gateway Plan. And then there was also an interesting discussion at the Asset Management Board about monetizing some of the town assets by allowing people to, or companies to buy names like they do on college campuses, like the Verizon Center or the, whatever they call the different stadiums around, but they said it's even gone so far as in some colleges now, they even name dorms, dorm rooms. People will want their name on it, and they'll make a certain contribution, and that'll last for a period of time. Andy Bell's getting more information on that, and it was just a thought. It wasn't really any more than that, but it's something that opens a possibility for maybe we can have the, Mr. Kilby's got plenty of money, maybe you want to put your name on something around here. But that's the
Sewer system.
yeah, that's the
trash gate.
Yeah, the trash can. Kilby trash can, all over there. They're giving real hard. So that's my report.
Thank you, John. You want to do a rebuttal, John, to this?
Later.
Report?
Later. I'll report on Lake Advisory Board. Had our monthly meeting last week ago, yesterday on August the 6th here at Town Hall, and I'll just kind of go through a little bit. One of the big discussions we seem to have a lot is requests for buoys, no-wake buoys, and most of the members of the Lake Advisory will tell you that if we granted all that we're asked for, we would have a ring of no-wake buoys all the way around the lake. So the committee over the years has kind of came up with a guideline that in order to have a buoy, you have to have a property that extends in some way out into the channel. And if you've got properties that are in a straight line down, they're not going to grant buoys for that. We don't want to have a lake that's nothing but buoys all the way around. So we had a request for 2 buoys at one property at on Barney Road, and after the folks were here that requesting that and stated their case, and after a lot of discussion, we realized we could rearrange some buoys that were already there and meet the need that they had. So that was what the motion was made, what we did. And then we had another buoy request at another property, 170 Tanner Road. Those folks were not present, but we could not figure out what it was they were wanting a buoy for, and the committee, the Lake Advisory Board denied that request. If I don't put you on the spot, Dean presented at the Lake Advisory Board an idea that he has to deal with some problems that we can deal with on a regular basis, and that's at the dam area. You mind coming back up and just, you want the notes from the meeting to how you said it, what you wanted, you're good, all right.
Yeah, I believe we're good.
So Dean, I'll just say Dean has proposed a solution for this issue, and I'll let him speak to that quickly.
Yes, part of it is, we had a buoy request for somebody that lived off, was it off of Neighborly Drive is their actual address?
Correct.
Okay.
Deep in the.
Yeah, deeper in the cove from the dam. And after looking at it, I've been here with the town for a little more than 12 years now, and we've had some boating accidents back there, and when it comes to the Marine Commission, I'll show you some pictures of how violent the boating accident was. And I got to thinking a lot about the condition of the dam and how old the dam's getting and stuff. And if you look at that cove, if you in your mind, when you come around the corner from Mr. Kilby's house, it's a dead end. Any direction you look at, it's either the dam or it's Rock Crest Cove. If you go in there at high speeds, the only thing you can do is turn your boat around in a tight circle and come back out. There's just nowhere for you to go. So after reading a buoy request from somebody who had almost had a child run over this past weekend, I got to thinking about it, and I brought it to the LAB to make that entire cove coming from, I think it's one house out into the lake from Mr. Kilby's, and making that whole cove in front of the dam a no-wake zone, because there's nowhere for a boat to go at high speed. The boat wreck that I'm speaking of, had that boat hit the penstock, I believe we'd been in catastrophic dam failure, because I believe it would have took the penstock out. When this boat hit a boathouse, it was a 6x6 post holding the boat up, or holding the boathouse up, and when this boat split that post, that 6x6 post came all the way back to the twin consoles of this boat and just split it in two. So the dangers that are there, you know, the dam would probably suffice, the people wouldn't, but the penstock I don't believe would ever hold. So my idea was to bring to the LAB is let's make that dam area a no-wake zone from, like I said, the house just to the lakeside of John's. That way, they still have plenty of room to turn in the lake in front of the dam marina in that area, but it would just take that one area where there's nowhere to go when they come around the curve, it'd take that out and put it as no wake. The LAB was all in favor of it to go to the Marine Commission.
So we're talking about bringing that to Marine Commission next month.
Yes, sir.
Why wait? With that being such a safety issue, why don't we approve that now as a council?
Do we have a recommendation from the board? We do have the recommendation from
Yes, the Lake Advisory Board made the recommendation to bring it to Marine Commission next month.
I'm okay with doing it now.
Yeah.
I
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Well, it's,
Do you happen to have the map with you?
I do, you can't see it real well because it's not in color, but here's the cove. There's my house, that's the house, and it's gonna be right, the buoys will be right across there, to the end of where the boats, docks are there. So that's the shortest point across.
We're talking safety, this needs to take precedent.
This line right here?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's about 325 feet, I figured it today. It's about 325 feet, I got on Google Earth today,
You
looking at
just put
it.
up 2 or 3 no-wake buoys there, is that what you're looking at?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you already have a motion on the table.
Oh, you made it? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't hear it. All right, so we have a motion to approve the recommendation of the LAB to to make that a no-wake zone. Is there a second?
I'll second this.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you very much.
Dean, thanks, I made a full disclosure at the LAB meeting, I had nothing to do with that. Dean came up with that idea, and especially when he threw in the thing about the penstock, and some boat going down through there, some guy having a heart attack driving or something, it'd be a big V-hull or something, we could be in bad trouble with penstock or something like that happening.
And if need be, for the purposes of formalities, if we need to reconfirm it next month at the Marine Commission, we can.
Okay.
If it pleases the council, I'd like to get with Valerie and Esther and get the information out
We don't really
to the
advertise
public
that.
now.
Because how many buoys, do you have a plan on how many you're gonna put across?
Going to get out there, I'm going to probably put, I'm thinking in my mind 3, maybe 4. I don't want them right on top of each other,
Right.
but if we can get them to get the information out to the public, I can actually use some of the buoys that are already in place in that cove and just bring them out and put them where we need
Because they
them.
won't be needed.
Correct.
The one back at Rock Crest, and there's 2 in front of the dam, and there's 2 in front of the docks,
Right.
Dam Marina docks.
Right.
So you've got plenty, I
So
think.
I think we can utilize that if we can, I think the biggest thing for us is going to be getting the message out to the public right now that's a new no-wake area for the lake.
Maybe even want a couple extra buoys temporarily, just to get the point
Yeah, and then
across.
remove them afterwards.
Be sure
yeah.
they got lights on them at night.
Okay,
Thank you, Dean.
okay, thank you very much.
And the second thing, I did ask a member of the LAB to come. Gary Housenfuss is our fisheries person on the Lake Advisory Board, and I've asked him to come. We have our, once every 5 years, Gary?
5 and
Right, something like
should have been
that.
sooner than later.
Fishing survey and everything, and so he is the fisherman on Lake Lure, I promise you. And he fishes more than anybody we know on Lake Lure, which is great. And so I asked Gary, because he does such a great job and so knowledgeable, to come and do that report.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hear me? Okay. Again, my name is Gary Hassenfuss, and I'm on the Lake Advisory Board. My area of responsibility is the fishery and ecosystem. The town has sponsored 3 major surveys, if you will, or lake studies over the last decade plus. We started in 2007, came back in 2011, and just completed one in 2018, last May. All these studies are done basically the same period of time each time we do a study. So we normally do them the last week of May. So we don't want to skew our results by doing it before the spawn or after the spawn. First, though, a brief history. North Carolina Resource Commission, Wildlife Commission, they began stocking various varieties of trout in 1969, and they pursued that particular stocking program through 1979. I think because they had an area in Marion where they could easily supply trout, they were using Lake Lure as maybe a testing area. But after 10 years of stocking various trout, even European species, we learned that they weren't living, because as the oxygen levels decreased in August and September, these fish would get into a particular thermal and they would basically die. They would stay in that thermal, or they would try to swim upstream. So this is actually a quote, and this actually has been in print from the North Carolina Wildlife Research Commission. Quote, "Trout production in Lake Lure is limited due to the increased summer water temperatures and siltation." So that was after 10 years. 11 years later, in 1990, the town assumed the responsibility for the fishery, with North Carolina, the state, being a consultant only. Before 1990, actually in 1988, the town started stocking rainbow trout, even after that experiment had failed. And for 18 years, they put rainbow trout in the lake to the tune of 40,000 pounds over that period of time. But they also did stock some other species. In 1991, the town added 25,000 largemouth fingerlings. 1991 again, the following year, another 9,300, and also 3,000 black crappie that same year. Back to the trout stocking. The 1988 until 2006, the program was release and catch. And if you recall, we used to close the lake for a period of time, and it was barbless hooks only. It was an interesting proposition, but I think a lot of people weren't using barbless hooks, and I think they were probably keeping the fish, so.
Cooler it's full, I think, so.
Stuff happens. Okay. At the end of 2006, and that was the very last year we stocked trout, we realized that trout couldn't and they didn't survive in the lake. And we needed another strategy. We really needed to be doing something to perpetuate our fishery. In 2007, we completed our first study, and the whole idea of the 2007 study was an inventory, to go in and see what we had in the lake, to categorize those fish. We spent 3 days electrofishing and looking at what we had, weighing what we had, identifying what we had, to see what our dominant fish was in the lake. And that turned out to be black bass. Black bass are largemouth bass and smallmouth bass. In our large numbers, we had black bass. Two things about these fish: they were skinny. They just weren't really what you would call healthy. And also, the lake was deprived of the type of habitat that we needed, the type of habitat that you get with Christmas trees. Okay? Now, the second study, in 2011, we concentrated on aging fish, and we wanted to find out how long it took to grow a 14-inch largemouth. And through aging fish with otoliths, that is a small ear bone at the top of the spine and at the base of the skull, you can age these fish. So we found out it was taking 6 years to age, to grow a 14-inch bass in Lake Lure. Now, ideally, under ideal circumstances, you can do it in 2 years. So we're doing it 6. Allergies. Now we have a baseline. The 2011 study was extremely important because we needed to know what our efforts were, and those efforts were more habitat, and we added an additional food source, which was threadfin shad. Now, the idea of threadfin shad is that it self-perpetuates. They actually grow well in Lake Lure. And so by putting 10, 20,000 fish in the lake very inexpensively, these fish are continuing to grow and develop, and they don't get larger than 5 inches. So for even a 10-ounce largemouth bass, that's easy fodder for them. In fact, we find fish in their gullet up to 7 and 8 inches, which is a big bite. In the meantime, and I'm being redundant here, that is our strategy, and it has been since 2007. Focus on black bass, which are largemouth and smallmouth, add structure each and every year, which we've been doing, 100 Christmas trees, and very inexpensive, and also doing the threadfin, and focusing, instead of adding more fish, trying to develop our main source. Okay. Now, we waited 2011 and to the 2018, and the primary reason for that was the inability to find a competent source at a reasonable price to do another study. So a year passed, 2 years passed, 7 years passed. But we just completed the study in May, and we aged the fish again. Now what we're looking at, why does it take 6 years to grow a 14-inch largemouth bass in Lake Lure? A lot of reasons. We have very few nutrients, the water's too clean, the pH is wrong, we don't have a lot of structure, and we have a lot of fish that don't understand they can eat threadfin shad. So we were really excited about this study because we were banking on this to show us, this last study, and doing the otoliths again, testing the otoliths, and this is very scientific. Each fish, largemouth, they have 2 otoliths, and those are 2 ears, and You remove those with tweezers, and you dry them, and you put them under a microscope, and it's like a tree, sawing a tree in half. They have rings, and you can actually age that fish. So after the 2018 study, we were thrilled to find that instead of 6 years to grow a 14-inch largemouth bass, it's taking 3.75 years. We've knocked 2.25 years off of the growth record. So we're excited, we have a plan, we have a strategy, it's working, and it's inexpensive.
Thank you, Gary. That's all for LAB and ABC Board. We meet next week. I did stop by and talk to Woody this afternoon. Sales last month were about $1,000 more than same month last year, but things are going well there. And I think I may have mentioned this last month, there are employment opportunities at the ABC store. So I think, Shannon, haven't you had a couple of people, or have you had a couple of people that filled out applications here? I think Woody sent a couple over, maybe. They may have just gotten the applications, but.
I'll speak with Anita.
Okay.
She didn't let me know.
Okay, and so if you know someone that interested, have them come and fill out an application. There's no discounts, no free samples, even for the advisory member of the council. Yes, sir.
John, I had one addition. Valerie reminded me that the entire study and the summary is now posted.
On the town website.
That's correct, under news release.
Under news release is the entire study. And it's a pretty neat, and this book, we'll have one here at Town Hall if anybody wants to come by to see this. It's the wrap-up of the thing as well. So, and that's all I have.
Okay. All right. We've got the Utilities Board that met last Tuesday. The primary purpose of this meeting was to review the contract for services for our Lake Lure low-pressure sewer system and wastewater plant upgrade. This is with Brown Engineering. Also working with Brown will be David Odom Engineering and Cape Fear Engineering as far as the design. We're looking at a $1.2 million contract for this project for the engineering services. So we have 14 pages here of cost review, identifications. After a long discussion with Brown Engineering and David Odom, the recommendation from the Utilities Board is to accept the contract. We have forwarded through our mayors working with us as well, and want to go through it and review some of the costs. We still have some questions and definitions that need to be run out. As far as the schedule and task, right now, we're looking for a bid, and the design submittal will be somewhere around June 1st of 2019. This will have to go to the state. It's got to be approved through your NCDEQ. So you got to get your state approvals. Then we're going to come back and finish the design approval deadline by October 1st, 2019. Then we'll advertise for quotes somewhere around January 1st of 2019, execute a contract around March 1st of 2020. So all this is in the works, all these meetings with Utility Board, and it'll take a little bit longer, probably a couple more months before we get everything done, but the Brown engineer has been turned loose on the first couple of phases of the project, which is a project development, planning and project managing, and the engineering report, which is all required by the state. So the process is going forward, and we're trying to meet the deadlines that the state's put forward that we're required to meet. So we had that discussion, and then the other discussion was about Point broadband with Russ Pitts. There's just not enough interest in our community to have a new contractor come in and try their services at this point, but we're not giving up, but it's going to be a longer time on that end of the spectrum. That's all I've got.
Thank you. All right, I think that concludes the reports, liaison reports, and that brings us to item number 6 on our agenda, which is the public comment. And This is where anyone in the public is invited to speak on any non-agenda or consent agenda topics. We ask that comments be limited to less than 5 minutes. And since we Shannon, would you mind grabbing well, I I think we had one person signed up tonight, at least when I looked at it. And since we only have one person, you get the full 5 minutes. Sometimes if we have a lot, we ask you to condense, but we have Stephen Norrie. Stephen, yes, sir, would you like to come forward to the podium? Again, identify yourself and your address, so we know where you are here in the town.
Okay, my name is Stephen Norrie. I live in Lake Lure Village Resort. That's 178 East Wilderness. It's the end of Boys Camp Road. I'm here to talk to you not only for myself, but for everyone that lives in Lake Lure Village Resort or at the end of Boys Camp Road. There's people on Cutaway and so on and so forth. Boys Camp Road, power outages. It's becoming an issue. We've had, and I think everybody's aware of it, we've had numerous trees down, power outages this year especially. It's become a serious issue. The last power outage we had, which was last week, another tree came down on Boys Camp Road. It's the same stretch of road every single time. It's not a surprise. We had a 77-year-old woman fall in her house when the power went out. Broken collarbone, 2 broken ribs, concussion, 4 days in hospital. EMS services could not get to her. I have been told, I cannot confirm it, but I think if you talk to the police department next door, someone sat with the woman for, I was told, 45 minutes before an ambulance could get there. It's a bad situation. We need to do something. I don't know what to do. I don't know if the town knows what to do. But we need to all get together and put pressure on Duke Energy. The town needs to step up and start stripping that road of trees, do something, right? There is some back exits and entrances that they're not really roads, but they are passable if you've got the right type of vehicle. Emergency vehicles can't use them. The town needs to make the roads usable. There's one off of Gardner Way. Gardenwood, yes. And there's another one seemingly off of Falcon. I don't know where it is. I just learned about these this past couple of weeks. Make the roads usable. We need emergency vehicles having access. There's been talk for many years about opening up a back access to Rumble and Bald. I don't care if you put a gate on it. So it's only for emergency vehicles. We need to do something. Please, we were lucky this time. We might not be the next time.
Thank you. Well, thanks for bringing that issue up. Yeah, it's not a secret to any of us. I think probably to a person. We've all received comments, and it's a frustrating situation. I know Shannon's looked into this, and we have private property issues with respect to cutting trees outside of the right-of-way.
I know
we can't do it,
yes.
but Duke, from my understanding, is Duke has the authority to clear their power line easement to remove that type of threat. I've seen them do it in many other areas, and I don't know why we can't get that kind of support.
And that's what I'm asking is, can the town put pressure on Duke to do what they're supposed to be doing? The other question is the town being compensated for all the resources every time the power goes out?
No.
No. The fire department, the police, you spend hours out there using your resources or our resources because Duke are not doing their job. Go after them, send them a bill.
One other update for you, we've been working for years to try to get that road open through, over to Rumbling Bald. We've made some progress, but there's some right-of-way issues that still have to be
The old
settled.
property
But
ownership.
we've been on that now for the whole time.
I know
It's just,
it's
it's a slow process, but it's not a forgotten one.
but it needs,
We're with you. It's
not
just-
only for us, but for even for people at the back of Rumbling Bald.
So
It would make a
that's
big
still being
difference.
worked on, so.
And as I say, there is at least one other road that could be made passable. It might be on private property, I don't know. I used it the other night. Out of an all-wheel drive vehicle, I went up. But,
Can we, Shannon, could we see if our local rep for Duke Power, could we at least have a sit-down with him and take him to that one location and see if there's anything they do, maybe have David meeting?
I think so.
I'm available.
Yes.
All right, then we'll have you in the meeting, get
Yeah.
Steve in the meeting.
Dustin, do you have a few comments you might want to make from a public safety standpoint? You've had to deal with this, I assume, and these emergencies come up.
Dustin, will you go to the mic? Go to the mic, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll get you involved in the meeting.
Boys Camp Road has certainly been an issue from the emergency access standpoint, and that road will certainly help. We are where you are working on those issues for a while. Duke Energy actually has a new position they're getting ready to fill. It's going to be kind of a link between local governments, emergency agencies, municipalities in Duke, and that representative will be able to take those concerns back to Duke Energy. So that may be a resource in the coming days, and we do have meetings planned with them and to establish that communication, that link there.
I know that we've talked about in our staff meetings, Dustin, you've expressed some concern about the time it takes to respond to some of the outages that we've had.
Yes.
And I know that you talked about contacting Dukes. I know that's on your list of to-dos.
Yes, we've made contact with Duke, especially about Memorial Highway. When these big trees and mudslides come down, it shuts our main access down from the other end of town, which again puts a necessity on us, depending on our mutual aid departments, to provide protection to the other end of town. Recently, we had a mudslide in a tree with power outages, and also had people stuck in the elevator at the Lake Lure Inn. Our fire department, we split up our staff and actually responded to fireboat to the Lake Lure Inn after taking the necessary equipment off of the engines to get access to the Lake Lure Inn because we couldn't go around the lake. Even if I was to have a major fire and a mudslide shut down Memorial Highway, I wouldn't be able to request a lot of times mutual aid from Henderson County or Buncombe County because those are continually shut down with mudslides. We know number 9's been shut down numerous times here recently. So that would be a nice asset to the town to have that link between the other side of the lake, the Rumbling Bald area, and the Boys Camp. That would give us.
So
In that case that Steve's talking about, did we think about using a fireboat to bring the lady over and rescue her?
I don't know what emergency services he's talking about set with the lady. I know we did respond units on out to the lady. I don't know the specific call that he's talking about. I have to go back and look it up.
I was figuring if the road's blocked, we ought to be going.
But we do utilize the fireboat to gain access if we need to, and we utilized the access road that was widened and made better during the Party Rock fire by the Forest Service dozers. So
Yes.
All right.
So I think that one of the points I wanted to make with asking Dustin to come is, again, it underscores the need to be able to circumnavigate this lake And if one road is cut off, we're cut off. We really need access around this lake for emergency purposes. And the second thing is I know he's working on it, but we definitely need to establish contact with Duke, know who that liaison is, and be able to pick up the phone and call them and let them know what our issues are relative to power outages and certainly the issues that were just described.
That access road would greatly increase or decrease the response time when our units are on other calls. Right now, if we have units on this end of town and there happens to be a structure fire in Fairfield, who knows how long it'll take us to get there.
And these are real.
These are real situations. They happen.
I'm also thinking about our dam. Somebody's on this side of town, and we got a situation at the dam like we've had this past year, and the road's closed. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about a lengthy period of time to turn around and go all the way around that outer.
Where are our discussions with Rumbling Bolt at this point?
It's really not actually, we're very fortunate tonight to have several folks representing the Rumbling Ball community, including board members. I see one of their managing directors in the audience. I'll try to kind of intervene in that. And I think it's more right now an issue of the property ownership along the right-of-way, the short half a mile stretch, than it is getting support from Rumbling Ball community. I have a sense, I live there, and I serve on some of their boards. There's a demand for, they see the need for this over there as well, in their community, and I can't speak for them, but there's probably a fair amount of frustration on their part that this thing hasn't moved forward. But there's a property owner issue right in the middle of this.
Right away.
Well, yeah, not even where the road goes through, and we just simply can't get any movement out of the owner. And we've tried several different pathways, and I don't know, Shannon, where we're going to go next, but I mean, we need to get in the car and go there. I don't know. I mean, show up at the doorstep. It's just something we need to do, and we need to get it done.
I recently sent letters, not Holloway. I sent 2 ways of letters to the owners about not Holloway, and the second one I sent was return receipt, and they just simply refused to sign for the letters I sent, and of course they didn't open them. They just refused to take them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a situation where you have a family who owns the property, and we would have to secure permission from them to construct a road through that property. And I know if we secured the permission, it would be at our cost to construct that road. It is securing permission, but the second one is finding the funds to construct the road to some point. That's not saying going through the resort. It's just saying creating a road that you can get emergency vehicles on, so that if in the event of some extreme emergency, and they seem to be more frequent and they're popping up all the time, we would need some sort of roughed-in road so we can get through.
Let me ask our attorney, is there anything that we can do to force the conversation in that situation?
I think part of what we're seeing on Boys Camp Road is, of course, not only all the rain and the saturated ground, but still some damage from the fire, where it completely burned the ground cover and everything in that area, and the base of those trees. So I think that's part of the problem we're seeing too. As far as clearing the right-of-way for Duke Power, the line, I believe, is on the right side of that road in the guardrail, but all the trees are coming from the hill up on the left. And if they only have a 50-foot right-of-way and you got a 100-foot tree, there's nothing we can do about that. And Duke will not clear their entire right-of-way, I don't believe. They have the authority to, but I don't think they will. I've been told by Duke directly that it is much easier for them to clean it up than to try to selectively cut.
Question on that road, that is on town property or town inside limits. going over to Rumbling Ball, that
Yeah.
road?
Yeah,
It's in town limits.
Old Sand Branch?
Yeah.
Yes.
When I make contact,
Nah, that is it, condemnation for
When I-
public safety.
when I made contact with Duke Energy, they did express concern that they try to take out as many problem trees in areas that they can, but there's no way they can get all of them. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And they will not
Right.
clear those right of ways.
All right, well, that's something we need to work on, Chairman, and the contact, and if that fails, then we have to go to some other option. I don't think we can just sit here month after month and continue to,
Please include Steve in that meeting when you have it.
With Duke?
Do-
Oh, that's
Be a
good.
nice gift. Someone.
okay. Well, that, I think concludes, unless there's any latecomers to the public comment period. I see none. So let's move on to the consent agenda. We made several little changes there, moved some items out, and we agreed to leave things like the meeting minutes in there with some minor corrections that Stevens recommended, or I had a couple. So, are we okay to adopt what's left of the consent agenda? Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the consent agenda, however, with the items that were corrected on the meeting minutes, to correct the typos in the other item D, to remove item E and item G, and move those into new business items B and C. And with that, I'll make the motion with those changes.
And if I might add, H had correction also.
Yeah, just had a date correction. I'll pay attention.
All right. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Moore. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, consent agenda. So that moves us into unfinished business, and we said that we would have a new item A under there, which is the beach operations. Shannon, you want to give us a little,
No, that's new business.
I'm sorry, that's new business, yeah, you're right. So we have the A that's left under there, which is on an unfinished business, replace ordinance number 180313, which deals with the regulation and operation of golf carts on certain streets in the town of Lake Lure, its entirety, and that is with ordinance number 180814, which is the replacement ordinance. And so I know that ordinance has been circulated. Shannon, background on that? This is the Rumbling Ball request. It all started back when?
The exact date I'm not sure of, but it came as a request from Rumbling Ball to the town, and the town drafted an ordinance, and there were some additions made to that ordinance to graft in some other requests in the community that were made. And so the town, I think, basically was responding to a request and put its best foot forward to try to meet the needs of RBR and other folks in the community. And as we worked through that process, it seemed to just grow and become something that was somewhat very difficult to manage on our part and Rumbling Ball Resort's part, and it just didn't seem to make sense. So we called time out. We actually suspended the ordinance a couple of times to give us time to hold discussions with RBR. And so we did that, and after 2 rounds of discussion, the last one we had the district attorney come and interpret the law for us. We finally turned to RBR and said, draft what you would like for us to consider. And so they responded, and so they did exactly that. They drafted those regulations, they sent those back to us. We tweaked those a little bit, but I think what you have in your packet is exactly that. What you have is what they have asked us to consider without a lot of additions from staff or anybody else. It's just the raw request from them to allow them to use golf carts on specific town, basically public streets. And so that's what you have in your regulations. What we're recommending is that we not go back and try to tweak what's already been passed, that you replace it with what is being proposed. I do know that Commissioner Weber came in today and performed his usual talent and showing us some things that we needed to change, and certainly all those, I think, are worthy, and I think we'll probably have that discussion. We've asked Mr. Kane to come and speak on behalf of RBR. We also have our police chief, who's been with us at every meeting that we've had. I know Mr. Gittens is in the background if we need to have input from him as well. But let's let Mr. Kane speak to us, and then let's just have that conversation and get to where we can make.
Just a little bit more back, could I just
Please
get into
do,
the background? This is where I think the thing finally got back on track, is we originally, Rumbling Ball came in just asking for permission to use a few public streets over adjoining the resort that connected some of the neighborhoods and connected them to the commercial area of the resort. And as we got into drafting that, we got into the issue of whether what jurisdiction existed in the roads actually in the resort, both inside the gate and in the neighborhoods that were outside the gate. And there was an obvious ambiguity of opinion about what the jurisdiction was, and it existed with our own police department, and as well, I think, as the residents, and I'm one of them, who live in the resort. And so there came a point after we had spent a lot of time drafting very specific what safety features and everything, where I think it dawned on us that the real question around which everything else pivoted was what is the jurisdiction of the roads inside of Rumbling Bald? And so we finally went to, with our police chief's recommendation, we finally went to the one person in the county that winds up at the end of the day having to rule or decide what that is, and that was our district attorney. And this is where, when traffic citations are issued and they go to court, ultimately someone has to figure out, even if the people issuing the citation have jurisdiction. And it seemed like a waste of time to write all these regulations if we did not have jurisdiction. So we invited Ted Bell, our DA, to come here. We had a meeting, and we just, about a week and a half before, we posed that question to him and said we needed a final definitive answer, determination as to what is the jurisdiction of the roads in Rumbling Bald. It really goes way beyond golf carts. It goes to the whole issue of what traffic regulations does the Lake Lure Police have a responsibility and the authority to enforce on those roads. And what the district attorney came back and told us is that as a result of some legislative changes in 2016, I believe it was, the definition of something called a public vehicular area was modified to clarify that roads in subdivisions and gated communities like this, and ungated communities where the roads are privately maintained and operated, that they fall within the definition of a PVA, a public vehicular area. And there's a very specific state regulation that deals with, statute that deals with those areas and exactly what traffic laws apply in those areas. Not every traffic law applies. And in fact, the roads that are in the resort, both inside the gate and outside the gate, according to the DA, fall under the definition, in his mind, clearly of a PVA. As such, one of the things that is not regulated in a PVA on those particular roads and streets are golf carts. They are unregulated, unrestricted. They're not prohibited by the state. And so therefore, our ordinance really, for those roads and those streets that are Rumbling Bald streets and roads, there's no purpose for it because there's no regulation of it. And so therefore, we stepped back and looked at the ordinance and said, well, the only roads really that need this are the very roads that they came to us in the first place to address, which are roads that connect areas of Rumbling Bald neighborhoods and to the gate where the commercial area is. And so our ordinance has been constricted back to that jurisdiction, and that's where we are. I want to say all that because I think it goes way beyond just a golf cart ordinance. I've lived over there for 7 years, and quite frankly, I often wondered, as I talk to my neighbors, what can the Lake Lure police do or not do over here in the resort, both inside the gate or outside the gate? And you hear a variety of different opinions about what that is. And so,
Well, if I could just throw in there from the insurance standpoint, that there's a difference. For a person that owns a golf cart inside the resort, and they use that golf cart to play golf or to go down to the restaurant or things like that, and they don't use, it's not designed for the street, lights, turns, the liability coverage for that is provided through their homeowner's policy. The minute that vehicle's registered, like these are going to be registered and stuff, to be able to cross roads and things like that, then they become a different animal, and they have to be added to a person's automobile policy in order to have, to be able to provide coverage to the town for liability coverage for that. They will have to have those golf carts added to their automobile policy.
I didn't know that.
and that's a part of the liability is a part of the ordinance, right? So,
Yes.
So I think it's been a learning experience. That's all I can say. You know, we, in addition to other towns and cities in North Carolina, kind of feeling their way as to, we have a little bit of a unique situation with the rumbling ball because of the size and extent of that development.
I appreciate the homework you guys did. Chief, have you read all this and you're comfortable now with what's on paper?
Clear.
I appreciate it.
Shannon included me in it, and we'll start to get here in the back and took recommendations, and
I just appreciate you guys getting the right guy in here, the guy that's, man that's going to prosecute.
That was his recommendation.
I think it's fantastic. Good job.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to drag that out or steal your thunder, but I just wanted that out in front of everybody so they didn't think it was just, we just come up with this. So go ahead, James, and say what you want to say.
Well, I think you and Shannon covered it well. I really don't have anything to add. The only thing I would add specific to the ordinance is that from our perspective, the ordinance is consistent with the enabling statute and with the model ordinance that the state has kind of placed out there, and that's what we were looking at to begin with, and understand the insurance implications if someone chooses to take that step and drive on these town roads. That's the choice they make, and thank you for the opportunity to do this and be here today.
Okay, thanks, James.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay,
With that having been said, I may have been a little premature in calling James. That was good. Chief, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything you learned that you feel like we need to know about, or the public would like to hear about in your research as you worked with us on this? You don't have to go to the microphone if there's anything I don't want to leave you out, if you feel like you need to.
I appreciate that, but the mayor told me pretty good beforehand what we found out from the DA and learning process, and it's great for y'all to bring the DA in, because that's, for us, that's the governing body right there. If we make charges, he's the one deciding factors. The charges were stick, so I just appreciate y'all bringing him in, letting him speak to us.
I would say that one thing that came out in our last meeting, and I think Officer Gittens was the one that brought this up, is the need for education about this. So once we put this on the books and have it, it'll be important for us to communicate outward to the folks in the community what this is and how it would go into effect and when.
well, one thing I just received, I think it was it yesterday, Phil? It came out from the POA board, I guess, a newsletter or a news, whatever, bulletin, announcing, this jurisdictional determination and the way that the traffic laws were going to be enforced. I mean, it seemed like a
Yeah, what we attempted to do, based on the conversation we had had, is providing notification to our membership that this meeting was occurring today, that the town council was going to consider this, and an attempt to explain a term used in our description of the golf corridor ordinance, which is the PVA, public vehicular area, and try to explain that, being step one of the next process. Should town council approve the ordinance, then start educating or helping to educate specifically our members of what this now means for you. I think we did a good job of doing that within the roads of Rumbling Bald. The next step would be, assuming you approve this, how that applies to those roads, town roads that are a part of the ordinance. And another distinction probably should be clarified. In your packet, you have a map, I believe, that shows those specific roads within Rumbling Bald, town roads, but in the Rumbling Bald area, that are those, I guess what I would call those connector roads. Previously, every road was identified in there, and there's just some of those roads, from our standpoint, is a safety concern for golf carts and motor vehicular traffic being on the same road. So we excluded those and limited the roads that are subject to the ordinance, assuming it's approved.
Okay.
I would say that one of the things that we did do is this registration process that we have, inspections would no longer be part of this. And basically, the applicant would come to town hall, they would fill out a registration fee, and basically attest that they have the proper equipment, and they would be given a permit, and then that permit would be placed on the golf cart. And then that golf cart, this would be the year that this permit expires, and then that golf cart then would be allowed to drive on those streets that are named and identified on the map that was submitted to us, and any other ones that council would like to add.
It basically follows the same model that we use for boat registrations,
That's right.
We adopted the same kind of procedure.
Trying to make it easy, trying to make it go fast.
And you will require evidence insurance on those, with accompanying those permits, like we do on boat permits.
That's right, yeah, that's right. If you come and you get this permit, you're asking for permission to drive on a public street, and so then those things would be required. Mr. Kildees, you can point that.
Has Lake Lure Village Resort addressed this, Steve? Have you seen this map?